I think we've known each other almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And we've talked about disclosure and how it's been just incremental and two steps forward and two steps back and one step sideways. And then we had the 2017 New York Times article, which was kind of a pivotal moment.
Mhm.
And then the next 6 years kind of sputtering. And then we had the testimony or the public announcement before this hearing from David Grush, the whistleblower. Now he's on the record in front of lawmakers in Washington, D.C. In your nearly 40 years in this field, did you ever imagine that we would be at this point where we have a military whistleblower in Congress telling lawmakers, you know, that there's a secret program to back engineer UFOs and they're recovering biological
Mhm.
material, basically non-human? Did you ever imagine we'd get here?
Ah, I was so hopeful, but I could never imagine how it would happen, whether it would be some announcement from some high official in the White House or some other way. I would never have imagined that it would have happened in the way that it did with respect to how these congressional leaders, the House of Representatives, went about drilling down deep to get these hearings. I just never thought it would happen this way in the face of a lot of resistance that all of these House of Representatives went through. No, to answer your question, no, I never thought it would happen in this way. I thought it would happen in some other kind of way of some official announcement or whatever, or some former president coming forward and blasting the doors open or something like that. But I never really thought that I would see pictures of a hearing room with literally a couple hundred people in it, and just sitting there waiting for these three people to testify, and all the people at the panel up in front. No, I did not envisage that. And I guess the only thing that comes back to my mind is when I watched the Watergate hearings way back in the 70s when Richard Nixon was under the gun. I thought that perhaps if it did happen, it would look like that. And as it turns out, Richard, that's exactly what it was. You had, John Dean sweating at the microphone and all that kind of stuff that happened then. And these three guys went forward and they didn't sweat. They were very cool, but it happened in a way that I really didn't anticipate.
So there were three witnesses. David Grush, of course, he's the whistleblower, served 14
Mm-hmm.
years as an intel officer in the Air Force and something called the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency.
Mm-hmm.
Um, First of all, I've never heard of that before. Have you? The National Geospatial Intelligence
No,
Agency?
actually, I before the only time that I ever heard of it was about 2 weeks ago when someone sent me his credentials. Actually, someone had got a hold of Leslie Kane's publication of Grush's opening statement, and that was about, oh gosh, I don't know, but a week ago, week and a half ago. That's the first time I'd ever heard of that particular organization. So I was lucky to get this statement well in advance of the hearings and go over it. So it did give me an indication as to what he was involved in, but I'd never heard of that specific organization. No.
Now, Grush had gone public, before officially testifying before
Hmm.
this subcommittee on national security, borders, and foreign affairs.
Right.
He let the cat out of the bag,
Hmm.
which was pretty monumental. But it's one thing to hear his report outside of the House, and then to actually see him and hear him under oath
Hmm.
repeating those amazing
Hmm.
claims. As you're watching the live stream on YouTube of these hearings
Hmm.
that took place on July 26th, you're hearing him actually say these things out loud. What was going through your mind?
Well, it reminded me of an avalanche, Richard, of information that uh, sort of was falling on people. And a couple of friends of mine were at the hearings, were in the room. And when he started to speak, particularly people like George Knapp, and I think Jeremy Corbell was in the front, and I think Steve Bassett was there too. I saw them in the pictures, and I know for sure Danny Sheen was there, but I didn't see his face on the pictures of the audience. But people tell me who were in the room, as soon as he started to speak, as soon as he was using the words technology, back engineered, non-human intelligence, and biologics, you could literally hear people in the front row going, oh, the kind of, trying to catch their breath and saying, did he really say that? And so that's the kind of impact that it hit the room with at the time. It just sort of, I know people had read his opening statement, but it was one thing to read something and to actually hear the man say it was absolutely astounding. When you mentioned bodies, he used the words biologics, which was his fancy way of saying bodies, but the impact was just as powerful in the way he put it.
Victor, I'd like you to read David Grush's his opening statement.
Okay.
It's about 3 pages,
Mm-hmm.
but this is historic, and
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
you
Okay.
should do it.
Yeah, I'll try to fumble through it here. Yeah, I've got it here in front of me. And he starts by saying, "Thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is a very important issue, and I'm grateful for your time." This is in front of the panel. And my name is David Charles Grush, and I was an intelligence officer for 14 years, both in the United States Air Force at the rank of major, and most recently from 2001 to 2003 at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency at the GS-15 civilian level. A lot of technical terms here,
That was
which is the
20,
military
sorry,
equivalent.
20, sorry to interrupt, Victor, but it was 2021 to
Oh,
2023, just for the record. I think you said
yeah,
2001
yeah. What the?
to 2003. My
Oh, yeah,
apologies.
yeah, that's right. Thank you. Okay, which is the military equivalent of the full bird colonel. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I was the agency's lead in unidentified anomalous phenomena and transmedium object analysis, as well as reporting to UAP task force, and eventually the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO. I was a whistleblower through a PPD 19 urgent concern filing with the Intelligence Community Inspector General. That's very important. We should talk about that soon. Following concerns reports of multiple esteemed and credentialed current and former military intelligence community individuals that U.S. government is operating with secrecy above congressional oversight with regards to UAP. My testimony is based on information I have been given by individuals with a long-standing track record of legitimacy and service to this country, many of whom also shared compelling evidence in the form of photography, official documents, and classified official testimony. I have taken every step I can to corroborate this evidence over a period of 4 years and to do my best due diligence on the individuals sharing it. And it is also because of these steps that I believe strongly of the importance of bringing this information before you today. I am driven by a commitment of truth and transparency rooted in our inherent duty to uphold the United States Constitution and protect the American people. I'm asking Congress to hold our government to its standard and thoroughly investigate these claims. But I stand here under oath now. I'm saying that, emphasizing it. I'm speaking to the facts as I have been told them. In the United States Air Force, in my National Reconnaissance Office, reservist capacity, I was a member of the UAP task force in 2019 to 2021. I served in the NRO Operations Center of the director's briefing staff, which included the coordination of presidential daily briefings and supporting contingency operations. And I should add right there that he did, in fact, participate in giving paper records to the president about this in the daily briefing. I'll go on here. In 2019, the UAP task force directed and tasked me to identify all special access programs and controlled access programs we needed to satisfy a congressional mandate mission. At the time, due to my extensive executive level intelligence support duties, I was cleared literally all compartments and in the possession of extreme trust in both of my military and civilian capacities. I was informed in the course of my duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program to which I was denied access to those read-ins or read-ons. I made the decision based on the data I collected to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspector generals in the effect of their whistleblowing capacity. As you know, I have suffered retaliation for my decision, but I am hopeful that my actions will ultimately lead to a positive outcome of an increased transparency. Thank you for your questions. And then he's also got, if you want, the closing statement. He separated the two. Do you want me to go on with the closing statement?
Yeah, let's do the closing statement.
Okay, good. It is with a heavy heart and a determined spirit that I stand under oath before you today, having made the decision based on the data I collected and reported to provide this information to the committee. I am driven in this duty by the conviction to expose what I viewed as a grave congressional oversight issue and a potential abuse of executive branch authorities. This endeavor was not born out of out of malice or dissatisfaction, but from an overwhelming and unwavering commitment to the truth and transparency, an endeavor rooted in our inherent duty to uphold the United States Constitution, protect the American people, and seek insights into the matter that we have been looking at before us today. In an era fraught with division and discord, our explanations and explorations into the UAP subject seem to resonate with urgency and fascination that transcends political, social, and geopolitical boundaries. A democratic process must be adhered to when evaluating the data, and it is our collective responsibility to ensure that public involvement is encouraged and respected. Indeed, the future of our civilization and our comprehension of humanity's place on Earth and its in the cosmos depends on the success of this whole entire process. It is my hope that the revelations we unearth today of non-human reverse engineering I have reported will act as an ontological, earth-shattering shock, a catalyst for global resonance and reassessment of our priorities. As we move forward on our path, we might be poised to examine and enable extraordinary technologies progress in the future, which our civilization surpasses current state of affairs in our propulsion systems, material science, and energy production. The knowledge we stand to gain from this and cooperation of the norm rather than the exception.
Just wow.
yeah, just wow is exactly right.
That this has to be the most significant utterance, important utterance ever in the U.S. House of Representatives or in any venue, I would have to say.
I can't think of a bigger one. The only thing that comes to my mind right now, as I alluded to earlier in our conversation, was when I watched the Watergate hearings, when John Dean was sitting at the desk before the microphone with his mouth this far from the microphone. I'm literally sweating beads of sweat on his face. That was monumental because it brought down a president, and that was the biggest thing that I ever heard in a congressional setting. And this, by far and away, is similar, but in so many different ways, much, much more important. But it's just unfortunate that it's not being given the significance at this point in time that it should. But I think that time will come too. So it's another part of how really important what he said and how the other two witnesses corroborated what he said.
So let's just go back to the opening statement for a moment, because you put a pin in this, and that was he became a whistleblower through a PPD 19 urgent concern filing with the Intelligence Community Inspector General, that's the ICIG, following concerning reports from multiple esteemed and credentialed current and former military and intelligence community individuals that the U.S. government is operating with secrecy above congressional oversight with regards to UAPs. So I think you wanted to highlight this process by which she became a whistleblower, the PPD 19.
Yeah, there's a really significant I guess distinctions, some distinctions that have to be made here. When he was in possession of this information, when he gathered all the information that he said he gathered from a number of individuals, a number of agencies, and he had this all, as did some other people too, but he was the main factor in possessing this information. And he, at the time, was being, I guess, inundated by requests for interviews about the stuff that he was purportedly in possession of, this information. So he couldn't go forward at the time to do these interviews. So what he had to do was go to a special office and do what exactly you just described there. He had to go and get this permission from this office that you just cited. He had to go and get permission from this office to talk publicly about his revelations, and that office gave him permission to do that, which allowed him to, first of all, stay within his special access clearance status, okay, and not break the law. So he was allowed by these people, by this office, to actually go forward and be interviewed by certain individuals that were planning to interview him. So that's what gave him the impetus and quote unquote permission to do what he did. And if he didn't get that, I don't think we'd be sitting here today.
So he mentioned all of these terms that we've been hearing about for decades, special access programs. And, we heard I believe he was a vice admiral, director of intelligence on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, supposedly gave an interview to someone sort of off the record, claiming that he had also requested to be read into some of these special access programs and was denied access.
Mm-hmm.
So we're hearing, this is, again, further confirmation of these special access programs that are beyond congressional oversight. So that's very significant.
Exactly.
But he was also, he was being questioned by U.S. Representative Nancy Mace, I believe, from South Carolina, who I thought did a pretty good job. I watched
she did, yeah,
her interview, the other two as well, Ryan Graves and David Fravor.
David
Fravor.
Yeah.
And we can get around to discussing their testimony as well. But after like sort of dropping that bomb, he didn't add much that I could see. Otherwise, he said, I can't speak about those other things, and kind of passing the ball to them. Now it's your turn to pick up the ball and run with it.
That's right. Yeah, the people that I've spoken to after this, just in conversation, was that he would sort of let the cat out of the multiple cats out of the bag. But he in that open session, and I think it's really important for our listeners to understand that he could say what he had heard from these people in his closed settings. And by the way, when he did hear these things from the individuals, and when he was interviewed by certain levels of the intelligence agencies that did interview him, he was interviewed under oath. So he was interviewed there under oath. And then coming before this committee, he was under oath too. So if he were to, in fact, make a falsehood, he could be put in jail. I think something really important under two systems. First, a couple of interviews with the agencies before he had the opportunity to present it to the hearing the other day, and then at the hearing itself. So he is liable for any kind of things that he says that are falsehoods. So he could be put in jail, and there's no reason why anyone would come forward that I know of that would want to say something and make it a falsehood and want to put in jail. So that's really important to understand. So from that, and your question again was,
I guess your comment on the fact that he could only go so far. And then basically had to say, I can't comment further. Exactly. And basically, it's up to you to investigate this.
That would be my answer to your question, is that he put the information out there in terms of what he was told. And he went a little bit further in some ways and, backed off on some. But as soon as it came down to giving names, dates, places, and all of that, he said, I'm more than willing to tell you, but I can't right now, I cannot do it in public session. And what I will do is share that information with you in what they call a skiff, a specific kind of closed session of information. That's what those compartmentalized closed session with congressional leaders. So he may be called upon to do that soon, or maybe he's already had it done in these skiffs. But that's where he will, in fact, give these congressional leaders all of the information that he alluded to, and that some people are criticizing him for not actually saying them at the hearing. So once he gets into these skiffs, into these closed sessions, I think he'll spill the beans even more so to the congressional leaders that were there. And then from there, which is this whole thing that I think people really need to understand, is that David Grush does not really care whether the American public or the American media believe him or not. He doesn't care one iota about that. The only thing that he cares about is that Congress believes him and takes that information and runs with it. That's very, very important for us to understand, because once Congress gets this inside information, then they can move forward, not only with conducting more hearings, calling other witnesses, but it also gives impetus to Senator Chuck Schumer's amendment to the legislation that he's putting forward to the Senate about this the National Disclosure Act, that he is demanding that certain things happen with respect to the president naming and putting together a 9-member panel board of review to review UAP things, and it's all in the language of this Schumer amendment. So he wants the Congress and he wants the government to move forward with this, and he sees his testimony as, when you start a car and the ignition kind of goes and then the car starts. Well, he's put the key in the ignition and he's turned it on, and the Congress has got to go forward with starting the motor and drive the car to get towards some sort of legal and congressional oversight about what really happened. He's just the beginning about all